History 102, Summer 2024, Test 1 review. What I'd like to do here is to go through and kind of review Test 1 for you, give you my expectations, and some things to do well. Number 1, the test will be available June 24th to July 7th. It's due on July 7th. You have 10 essay questions, minimum 250 words per question. Okay. You do not have to take the test all at once, and in fact I encourage you not to. Also, I encourage you to put your answers in a Word document so it can be saved later. I am told that Canvas does save answers. If you do your answers in Canvas, you should just be able to log out and it should save your answers. I have had students tell me it does not. So my recommendation is to do the video, do your answers in a Word document and save it, and then transfer over when you're ready to submit to Canvas. So that if there's an issue, you can email me the answers if there's a technical issue. Tests need to be in essay form, so no lists, no bullet points. I don't want to see lists or bullet points, or it's got an essay form. Okay, paragraphs. Okay. So there's that. You have to take it out once. Obviously, no group work. You are welcome to email me answers to kind of see if you're on the right track. I'm okay with that. My job is to teach you. So if you are, if the answers aren't good, I'm happy to help you learn and do better. But I do need just assessing how you do. So if you just want to make sure you're on the right track, just go with that. Let's see what else. So let's dive into each question and talk about them and see how you do. Lecture 1. Question 1 is from Lecture 1, Reconstruction. We're going to compare and contrast presidential Reconstruction and congressional Reconstruction. So one of the perhaps the biggest political battle of the Reconstruction era, the decade after the Civil War, is the presidents, Lincoln and Johnson, competing with congressional Republicans over control of Reconstruction. And so you'll kind of compare and contrast the motives and purposes and the specific things each one did. So like Andrew Johnson had a more lenient attitudes towards Reconstruction, right? He allowed the southern states, the former Confederate states, to kind of control who they let vote. Easy way to get in the Union. They didn't have to ratify amendments. Johnson was okay with some of these former Confederate states re-electing to office former Confederates. Right? Congressional Republicans a lot more strict. They set up a policy to have the southern states jump through the hoop. So they had to ratify amendments. Remember, the southern states get divided into military zones, right? And so you can kind of compare that and contrast that. What is you want to talk about the ultimate, what's the ultimate battle, or what's the ultimate resolution of this battle between Congress and the presidents? What did Congress do? They impeached Andrew Johnson, and so you kind of see, the battle there where they're like, well, we'll just impeach him and get rid of him. Just trying to compare and contrast that. You can talk about other issues, Freedmen's Bureau, black civil rights. So there you can bring in other topics as well as you talk about this battle. Lecture 2 is about industrialization. We want to pick 3 captains of industry and discuss their contributions to 19th Century American Economic Growth. The lecture in the page, you got examples. I gave you some examples. Just Google list of captains of industry. You can kind of talk about them. Again, in paragraph form. So, paragraph 1, John D. Rockefeller. Paragraph 2, Andrew Carnegie. And just kind of talk about their contributions to American economic growth. Lecture 3 is analyze progressivism as a political ideology. So what I'm looking for on there is in the page. Let me pull it up here in real time. So I thought about pulling everything up before I talked to you guys, but I was like, let me so in the page I gave you this page where you'll discuss the ideology of progressivism and kind of your point of view on it. Okay. The other reason why I went into a discussion of progressivism as an ideology, when you get to the 1950s, you'll review modern American conservatism as an ideology, and you'll compare and contrast them. And so you can kind of go over that. I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe I put in let me make sure I did before I say I did. Okay, yeah, I did right there. And so I need to embed these. I didn't embed them, but like you click on this one.
Hello, welcome to History 102 lecture.
You'll see. I go over in detail this error, and so you want to go over. You can go over that, and that will help you quite a bit. So that should help you there. Let me go back to the modules. Or no, that. Let's get back to. Let me get back to it. So that's lecture 3. Lecture 4. Whoop. Okay, here we go. There we go. Doing this in real time. You're welcome. Okay, let's bring this up. So that is lecture on 3, Popular Progressivism. Lecture 4, World War I, describe how America mobilized for World War I. So you watch some videos and the lecture, kind of whatever, how America got ready for World War I. You can talk about a lot of stuff there. Government control of the economy. The U.S. government during World War I, controlled prices, what was going to be produced. They have a restricted freedom of speech. You can talk about the draft, Food Administration. There's all kinds of stuff you can talk about for that one. Lecture 5. What aspects of the 20s or lessons are important to understand for 21st century Americans? So the 1920s were 100 years ago, right? And so, it's a century. And so we go, well, why do we have to study an era 100 years ago? Some historians have called the 1920s the birth of modern America. And so that's what you kind of want to look at. What do we see in the 1920s that kind of tell us the beginnings of modern day culture? Civil rights, things like the Harlem Renaissance, the Immigration Act of 1924, the Sacco and Vanzetti trial, government, the culture wars that we have today. In the 1920s, you had Prohibition. You had the Scopes Monkey trial, evolution versus science. You had this urban-rural split, right? And so you look at aspects of the 20s, the beginnings of the jazz age, modern music, jazz age, jazz music, the beginnings of modern industry, right? Radio, cars become more, a lot more. Cars started looking like cars today. Airplanes, commercial air travel, the beginning of talking movies. So, the 1920s, it's an important era. And so, kind of looking at, it's 100 years ago, we study this, what do we kind of see? The 1920s economy, is similar to the late 90s, early 2000s with the internet.com bubble kind of a thing. So you study the 1920s, organized crime. You look at kind of what do we gain from that for today, kind of a thing, right? The next one, Lecture 6, The Great Depression. I wanted to have a question about kind of the different interpretations of the New Deal, but I decided, you're doing it in a discussion, so I thought I'd make the Lecture 6 question a little bit easier. Just pick 3 New Deal programs and discuss their pros and cons. And so Lecture 6 I intentionally made a little easier because in your discussion you'll be kind of going over the myths of the New Deal, the myths of FDR, kind of get a more balanced view of that. So the New Deal program, just the alphabet soup you've gotten since kindergarten. The AAA, the WPA, the PWA, the HOLC, all that stuff you've gotten, since grade school. Okay. Compare and contrast fascism and communism and totalitarian progressive ideology. So I went over quite a bit that week. Shoot. Okay. First, you want to define fascism, compare and contrast it to communism. Talk about the leaders we talked about. We talked about Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, Tojo. We talked about 4 different countries and their interactions with totalitarianism, right? Stalin, the Soviet Union, Mussolini in Italy, Hitler, Germany, Tojo, Japan. Okay? So you have, I bored you to tears. You have 4, talk about the totalitarian ideologies. Talk about how, I argued, the other thing I argued, if you were paying attention, I argued a different point of view to you. The point of view you get in your high school history class and even your college classes is that, communism and fascism are on a spectrum, a line, and they're complete opposite ideologies. If you were paying attention, I argued pretty strongly that that's not accurate. They're 2 sides of the same coin. So, you can deal with that. Okay. There's 2 separate interpretations there of fascism and communism. There's what's the synthesis of that? Because in the lecture, in those videos, I told you, I said, I went over the similarities between fascism, but I also talked about how they are different. They are different ideologies. Are they exact opposite? I argue no. They're more similar than people want to admit. But you argue that point of view. What is, you as a student historian, you've studied, you're going over these issues. What do you think of this? You argue your point of view. Lecture 8, World War I. After I did the videos on the Holocaust and Japanese American internment, I probably got a little too opinionated, but so just tough for what it is. But we went over the Holocaust and Japanese American internment, and what do you think? World War II. That World War II era is, we're getting close to 100 years ago. What do we get from the events today? What do we what do we glean from this? You can deal with Holocaust revisionism. What we're getting 100 years ago. More and more, there's news articles. More and more people are asking questions about things. What does that mean? What? And so, a question I used to have instead of this one, a question I used to have was, students go look up Holocaust and Japanese American websites. You can do that in your study. Kind of look up kind of what it means to you, kind of a thing. Why should we still study them? Why should we study them? Should they be studied in a more balanced way, kind of a thing? Because in those videos I talked about what, like you have to teach the Holocaust and Japanese American internment a certain way. I mean, a high school or college instructor cannot tell their students the Holocaust did not happen. So you have to teach things a certain way. What does that mean for our education? Deal with some issues for what does it mean for 2024, kind of thing. Freedom of speech, censorship. How bad can things get? What's interesting, one of the overlooked aspects of the Holocaust and Japanese American internment I think people ignore is, in both the Holocaust and Japanese American internment, it was government policy that did things. And what I find interesting, I think a lot of students, that goes over their heads. Because a lot of people turn around, they decry the Holocaust and Japanese American internment, and then turn around and do whatever government says today. You can deal with that issue. Are we not learning the correct lessons from the Holocaust and Japanese American internment? I see it all the time. It's like, we decry. The Holocaust and Japanese, those government policy. The government did it. The state did it. And then people will turn right around and go, we have to do what the government says. Did you learn that thing? So you can deal with that issue. I find that kind of interesting. People will the horrors of the Holocaust instituted by government, tyrannical government, in the name of public safety, by the way. Both the German and Japanese, both the German and the American government, their policies were in the name of public safety, and then today we talk about learning lessons from history. Then we turn around and go, we got to do what government says. Really? Okay. Gee. Are you not getting the lesson then? You acknowledge the lesson and you ignore. So I think that's an interesting aspect. We'll talk about that. Anyways, lecture 9. From the following list, pick these issues. So just pick 3 of the events or people and just describe them. Berlin Airlift, Division of Germany, NATO. Just look up stuff about them and talk about them and their significance. Lecture 10, the 1950s. This is a big one. This is a big one. So the baby boom generation, or boomers, as we call them today, they grew up in the 1950s. Older people in their 70s, people in their 70s and older, people in their 70s and 80s grew up during the 50s. Starting born in 1960. Yeah, so people from their late 60s to early 80s, their childhood was in the 1950s. Okay. And we know from popular culture, a lot of the popular media stuff from the 50s, That was their growing up years. We've studied the 50s. What, from your study of the 50s, how does that compare and contrast with, say, people who, a lot of CSN students, the younger ones, your childhood is probably in the, I don't know, the late 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, like, you know, like if you're 20 years old in 2024, you're born in 2004, you know, if you grew up in the, if you're one of my students that grew up in the 80s, 90s, you know, don't feel left out. I mean, you can talk about your era, but I specifically pinpointed the Zoomers, you know, the Zoomer generation, the young ones. But if you're somebody like me who grew up in the 80s, you can talk about that. If you grew up in the 90s, you know, you can compare and contrast kind of your decade too. But I want the focus, like, for, you know, you young people, you Zoomers, you live in the 2010s, 20s. You know, what do you think? You know, well, at 50 years from now, will you Zoomers, you younger students, 17, 18, 19, 20, 50 years from now when you're old, will you look at your childhood the same way as people in the 50s did? You know, idyllic? I mean, you know. So look at nostalgia. Think about nostalgia. Think about the growing up years and how it'll affect how you view the world. You know, how you might view the world differently. Okay. And so, kind of, you can talk about that. And so, anyway, so that's the test. Good luck with it. Email me if you have any questions. You know, my goal is to teach you, so if you need to be taught something, I'll go over it. Thank you, and have a great day.